Hey, my nonprofit visionaries. I am Shalita, the nonprofit Easter O'Neill, and my mission is to help business owners, influencers, and community organizers launch and revitalize nonprofit organizations that will rebuild their communities. So, thank you so much for joining us today for our hashtag nonprofit no filter live. And we're going to be talking about equity, community engagement, and evaluation. And today I have with me Ms. Shawnta Jackson, CEA or Chief Executive Associate, right, Shawnta? Of Cause Engagement Associates. And I just want to tell you a little bit about her. So since 2009, she has worked with organizations and teams across the United States to plan, implement, evaluate, and share the outcomes of their stakeholder and community engaged initiatives. She also serves as a facilitator and a guest speaker for various professional audiences. Her background includes culturally responsive community engagement, stakeholder relations, train the trainer, curriculum development, program planning, and program evaluation in the areas of equity, social justice, and the social determinants of health. Y'all know I've had the pleasure of working with Shawnta in a number of different settings, and I am always just inspired by her. I mean, her tenacity, her authenticity, her professionalism. You know, they say iron sharpens iron. And every time I have the ability to work with her, I am the better version of myself. So I'm just excited to have you here with us, Shawnta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the hashtag no profit. What is it?
Hashtag nonprofit no filter.
Yeah, nonprofit.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm looking forward to responding to your questions, engaging, and having a really productive conversation. What you're going to ask me, I don't know. So.
No, it's going to be some good stuff, though. It always is. Hashtag nonprofit no filter. And y'all, I saw her calendar for this week. And let me just say, I'm just glad that she squoze us in because this is a very busy woman. So get your notepads, any questions that you have, you can put it in the comment box and I will bring it up on screen. Or if you have any just comments, questions, whatever the case may be, I'll also open it up towards the end for about 10 minutes for any questions. So regarding the topic today, or if you just had any nonprofit questions that you wanted to ask, right? So let's just get right into it. Let's do it. So why are the areas of equity and social justice so important to you? Like what roles do they play in community engagement and evaluation?
So anything and everything that I do, I made a conscious decision and I'm very intentional about only working on socially conscious initiatives.
Yeah.
And so my purpose in life is to help people to help themselves and others. And when I first moved to Maryland, so I've been here for, I'm on my 7th year here in Maryland. And before I moved here, and then even just going to grad school, so I have my master's in public health from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And even when I was, so I got that in 2010. But even doing that and then trying to even move from the West Coast to this over this way, southeast or east, I kind of made a pact with God, and I said, God, please, you take care of me. I'll take care of other people. I'll share what I know. I'll be fair and ethical. Just take care of me, and I take care of others. So as long as I'm taking care of other people and I'm doing what's right, I feel like I'm always taken care of, and that's true, and it's reflected in my life. I'm as you know, we both work as consultants. I am just as you are. I'm 100% self-employed. I'm single parenting. And I have never wanted for anything. I have no family or barely any family here in Maryland or in the DMV area, and I don't want for anything. So I contribute that to my pact, my agreement that I have with God. So again, everything that I choose to do is socially conscious. My background is in working on equitable issues. I started out actually in public health teaching sex ed, and I would teach in juvenile detention, probation, foster care settings, group homes, halfway houses, behavioral health centers. And even though And so the issue with that would have been reproductive justice. The fact that children in the state of Nevada, they weren't being provided comprehensive sexuality or reproductive health education within the public school system. It wasn't happening. But then even though I'm teaching them about anatomy, their body, healthy relationships, trust and abstinence and birth control, I'm teaching them all of these topics, but I'm building a rapport and I'm learning about, like I said, the situations that they're in. Juvenile detention, probation, foster care, halfway houses, behavioral health centers. They've had adverse childhood experiences and a lot of different things. And so those issues, and I'm like, okay, they need assistance with this. They need this, they need that. So me naturally kind of being around individuals like that, it kind of birthed to, you know what, everything that I'm going to do is socially conscious.
Yes.
And so I assist organizations with needs assessments, strategy, implementation, and evaluation, or even sharing the outcomes of their socially conscious initiatives. And so it is my responsibility. And so we're throwing around this word equity and equitable.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations, and this is prior to COVID-19, prior to the public death of George Floyd, these terms, equity, and some people tie it in with inclusion and diversity, and I'm not an expert in those areas, but I can say that just because people are using the terms and organizations are saying it, I don't think that they really necessarily understand what it means, and that they're actually being intentional about using equitable practices or using an equity lens. And so I was just thinking about the conversation that we're having today, like how would I explain equity to you?
Yeah, yes.
So there's
my next question.
There's equality, and then there's equity. So equality is giving everyone what they need. And there's this image in public health where there's three individuals, and a lot of people probably have seen this. And so there's three individuals, and they're trying to look over a fence to watch a ball game. And they're all at different heights. So one person is tall enough to not need one box. So they each have one box, but they're at different heights. And so even though they all have the equal amount, they still can't see not everyone can see over the gate to be able to witness the ball game. And so one person will give up their box to give it to the shorter. So in this particular image, the two individuals, one individual only needed one box, and then the shorter individual needed two boxes to stand on. But at the end, so one person has two boxes, one person has one box, and one person doesn't need a box, but they all watch the ball game.
Yes.
Equity. Equity is giving people what they need and supplying them the resources and tools and services that they need. It may be a little extra, but it's based on their needs so that they can have this quality and outcomes as it relates to health, life, education, income, just various different factors in life. And that's where social determinants of health come in. But I'll let you ask me your next question because I can keep
because you can tell you're passionate about this, which we need that passion. So a lot of with my clients, I'm really serious about impact. And, with nonprofits, you have the passion when you want to start something, you want to change something in the world, but not necessarily the structure or the business acumen on how do you actually prove that what you're doing or what your nonprofit has been established to do is actually going to make a difference in the community. So can you tell us what impact is and why it's important that nonprofits are able to actually prove their impact?
Okay, so it's hard to prove impact. And the reason why, and so with evaluation, let's think of, let's categorize it. So you have and let's categorize it in terms of outcomes. So you have short-term outcome, medium-term, long-term, and then let's consider impact. So impact could be based off of the activities that you're doing in your program. You may not actually start seeing an impact until 10, 15, 20 years later. So that's very, very hard to measure your impact. And there are others in the community that you serve, or the city that you serve, or state, that may be offering the same type of services. Unless you're the only service provider and the only person offering that type of service or resource to this individual or their families, how can you actually say that because of your program and because of your actions that they have this impact from 10 to 12 years from now? So I don't want to, and the reason I put it and I worded it like this is because I want people to understand that we're saying impact, but depending on who you talk to, and if you're talking to a professional researcher or evaluator, they may kind of challenge you with that word impact. So that's why short-term, medium-term, and long-term outcomes. And your goals should be, and your objectives should be set like that as well, for the short term, for the medium term and long term. So for example, let's say my organization has a program where I'm intending to increase the knowledge around a subject. And as a result of me increasing their knowledge, then I probably will have some type of behavior change. Then as a result of that behavior change, then this person may, for example, graduate high school and go on to college. So what I just kind of explained to you were the short, medium, and long term. Short term, I'm increasing knowledge. Now, how do I measure that? I can do a pre and a post assessment. I can interview them. I can survey them. I can look at their baseline, where they were at, like kind of assess their needs and their strengths and their weaknesses. Some people don't like to say weaknesses, but their needs and strengths, and just where they're at prior to me engaging in any activity with them. And then once I deliver my services, and then I could assess to see, as a result, and then ask them. So as a result of you receiving my services or my organization services, or what was what are some of the incremental changes that have occurred? And so that's when you're collecting that. So those are your sources of evidence. But remember, increase in knowledge, that's not an impact. In my opinion, that's more so, it is an accomplishment, but it's a short-term outcome. Okay, so you've increased their knowledge, but did you have any plans for, after you increase their knowledge, what are the expectations? Is it supposed to be like a change in behavior? And how are you assessing that? And how are you gathering your evidence to show that they're doing this? Right. So are you having follow up? And then even for the long term, if they're part of your program. So that's why I'll stop there. But I just wanted to kind of give some education for how I define impact and how others may. So when you're out presenting and when you're speaking, sometimes I think it's okay for us to give an explanation of what we mean by impact. So if you're going to use those terms, just kind of define what you mean by that, so that you have a clear understanding with your stakeholders and to your audience of how you're defining impact.
Absolutely. And I was just talking to one of my clients earlier about when you say change behavior. And I truly believe that people start nonprofits, and when you get to the root of, regardless of the issue that you started your nonprofit to address, it is really about changing behavior at a basic level. And that takes time, right? But you have to be really intentional, like you said, around, well, what are the outcomes that I'm tracking, short term, medium term, long term, that's going to really lead me to a change of behavior that will show that I've had impact, like true impact down the line.
Right. So, or even with your organization. So in evaluation, there's formative. So the key word, the root word there, form. So formative evaluation, and then summative. So summative would be more so towards the end. This is what we did. So what we did and how many people participated in our programs, and how many people we recruited, and how many people actually completed. That's a part of your summative evaluation, and that's your process. That doesn't necessarily talk about your outcomes of the knowledge, the changes, the incremental changes that you expected, right? And that you documented. So in your summative, you have your process, and then you have your outcomes. But you're summarizing what you've done. But when you're evaluating, and if it's a formative evaluation, this could be something that, let's say you have a 5-year program, or your organization has a 5-year initiative, And instead of waiting to the end of the 5th year, you're probably doing some type of internal or external evaluation throughout the process. So at the end of year 1, for example, there could be a report saying, okay, this is what was done. These are the incremental changes and the sources of evidence that we have thus far. And this is what our participants are saying. And these are the identified lessons learned. These are the identified challenges. And then based off of this, then these are some recommendations on how we can improve our program moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually helping us to improve and shape our process. Or this could be something that could be done if you're piloting and you're not necessarily, you're just kind of working through the flow of your programs, trying to see. But with the formative evaluation, you're using it to help you make decisions for quality assurance and improvement.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you started talking about evaluation, and I want to get back to that, but I want to go to data, right? Because what you were explaining earlier is, the information that you're collecting, like assessments and things like that, that's considered to be data. But a lot of grassroots organizations, when they hear data, it's intimidating. Like, well, what does that mean? Is there something fancy that I'm supposed to be like? What is data, and how can they actually collect it? Ways that they can collect it.
Okay, so data are, because data is plural.
Are. That's right.
It's kind of like people data. People are, not people is. People are.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So data are. So there's 2 types of data. You have secondary data. So secondary would be, it's already existing, and you're pulling data. You can use it as is, or you can use it to create another type of story, or do some secondary data analysis on it. So secondary sources of data would be your local city, health department, county, state, federal data, information that's pretty much already existing. Or if your organization in the past has collected information on the community or the groups that you serve, that's considered secondary. Or it's already existing, should I say. So you already have existing data. But then you can have your primary data that you collect and that you design. And so the opportunities for data collection would include, and I'll give examples as I'm talking about some of the opportunities. Okay. So let's say you're at the beginning of the program planning phase, or you're conducting some research because you're writing a grant, and you want to tell a little bit about what the problem is, just an overview and possible solutions, right? And to give some type of historical context. You can look at existing information. However, I would encourage individuals, and this is more so time versus money. However, if you have the opportunity to offer some type of incentive to individuals that you can survey or interview, I would encourage that as well. But incentives could be food. It could be offering food and hosting a focus group or some type of information session to learn more. That's a data when you host an information session, or if we're doing research or evaluation, we'll call it focus groups, but you can name it whatever you want. But you have a set amount of questions, and they're intentional questions. And it's a reason why you're asking these questions, because you're trying to retrieve information. You can administer a survey, you can interview people, you can hold group sessions to learn more about what their needs are, how they define quality of life, what their goals and visions are, what their strengths are personally, or what they say the strengths are in the communities and the neighborhoods that they live in, or whatever that relates to your context of your organization and your mission, right? So that's a data collection opportunity. And this can be done, and I will actually suggest that it's done prior to actually planning or implementing a program, because you want to get input. So this is this participatory shared decision-making process. And this is a part of community engagement as well. So even though we're collecting so everything is kind of twofold, or threefold, should I say, multifold. So we're collecting this information and this data, because we want to be held accountable to ourselves, to our stakeholders, and individuals that we serve. But in the process of collecting data, what we're doing is we're engaging the community that we serve, We're giving them an opportunity to share their voices and their concerns and give feedback and to have a contribution to the process of how we're going to help them. So we're not just saying, I know what's right for you. This is what I think you need. And then also I'm looking at this already existing data, which is nothing wrong with that. But if you can engage them in the process, you're already building trust with them and you're already starting to engage them at the beginning of the process. And so this is something that I recommend as far as community engagement. But it's also, again, your original question was about data. It's a data collection opportunity. So your needs assessment. And then with your program planning, other opportunities, again, if you're providing education, a data collection opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, baseline, before you actually give them any type of education or any type of information, maybe administer some type of survey to kind of see where they're at. Do they know about this already? And maybe your pre and your post assessment, so post after the intervention, maybe it could be identical. It's up to you to decide. And maybe you want to collect some demographic information as well. So what I mean by demographics is not just your age, your race, or ethnicity. You can collect psychographic information. Do you like to read? What are your interests? Whatever it is that you feel is important, you can be creative. But that's a data collection opportunity prior to actually implementing something, so where you can have a pre and a post, and you can say, okay, as a result of the program, one of the outcomes, whether it's short term or medium term or long term, but one of the outcomes is that we did have an increase in learning, and we did see this. So you have to kind of think ahead with your data collection, and your data collection should actually be planned in your program planning process. And for some of you, it might even be in your grant writing process.
Love it. So we talk about data collection. What are some of the ways that organizations can collect data? What software or any other tools, that they should use to store this information?
Okay, so let's assume I'll start with I really don't have a budget.
Yes.
There's G Suite, Google. So you can create surveys or questionnaires, or you can create like your own database. Let's say there's intake questions that you might have your staff want to take. This is not always about engaging directly with the community that you serve. Data can be collected at registration. It could be a lot of different things as data. A sign-in sheet, that's data, right?
Yep.
But how do I organize? So now I'm thinking operations, right? So operations, like how do I organize this? Again, Google Forms, that could actually be a survey, or you can make it a data entry input for anything within your organization. There's SurveyMonkey, and then of course there's old-fashioned pen and paper. That's not necessarily safe right now during COVID-19. I'm thinking, so Google spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, you can find templates online, but SurveyMonkey is really good in Google Forms. It doesn't have to really be super sophisticated. If you have the budget to hire someone to develop some type of software or some type of system for your data collection, that's great. But if not, again, SurveyMonkey, Google Forms, an Excel spreadsheet. Just have a process and a protocol. That's what's more important. So, for example, Carmen says SurveyMonkey is excellent. For me, it's more so a protocol and a policy to make sure that you can have all these systems in place, but if people don't understand it, and your staff, if they don't understand why they need to do it, or if there's protocol for when information should be entered, stored, filed, assessed, looked at. If you don't have a protocol for that, then it's all no good anyway, and it's just going to be a mess.
Absolutely. And another, sorry, go ahead.
No, so like just a protocol, meaning what data are going to be collected. How are we collecting this data? How are we inputting it? And who's responsible for doing the input, and when? Is there a schedule? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Who's responsible for doing it, roles and responsibilities. That's more important than just the data. It's the actual planning behind it. And then when do we plan to, like, what's our process for even analyzing this? How are we going to look at this? Are we having meetings to talk about the outcomes of the information that we've collected to make decisions moving forward? Or we're just going to let it sit for 12 months until we have to write a report to our funder?
Absolutely. And that's the structure part, because when we talk about data and impact and things like that, like if you are collecting it properly or to suit your organization's needs, that's fine. But you really have to have the structure in place as to, like you said, how are you going to use the information? Who, like you said, is responsible for collecting the information? This goes to structure. A lot of times with nonprofit visionaries, we think up here. We're visionaries, so we don't get into the weeds of, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, it's a great idea, but there's layers to it, and you have to make sure too that you have a team of folks. Y'all know I talk about building your tribe, starting with your board members, of people who are there alongside of you to help you do different pieces of this, because you might be a nonprofit visionary that's like, I am not good with databases. I am not technologically savvy. I don't know what I'm going to do. This is overwhelming. Okay, you don't have to be the one responsible for every single thing. Just make sure that someone on your team feels comfortable with it and they know what their expectations are so that they can do it, and that you can focus on making sure everything comes together visually, or the visionary area of the organization. Another tool that I like to use is Airtable. So airtable.com. And I use the free version, but of course, with every software you can upgrade to different pieces. But I've been able to continue to use the free version, and I tell my clients about it. They're like, oh my gosh, everybody loves this. My team loves it because they can just add things. I can tag somebody when I need them to do it. We can all be on the same page. So make sure that you are looking and researching at different technology or different software that can make it easier for you to streamline your processes and your data collection. Now,
really quick, what we've talked about thus far, and I'm like, okay, so what we've talked about thus far is more so quantitative, even though the interviews and the focus groups, I'm sorry, what we talked about thus far is qualitative. I'm sorry. No, quantitative. I said it right.
No, quantitative is right.
I'm sorry. So quantitative. And so the assessment, the interviews, all that stuff, that's what we would call qualitative data. So that's whenever you have words, and so that words, testimonials, reviews, any type of feedback, responses to questions, open-ended questions. How did you feel about the program? All of those things like that. Those are not necessarily things that we can necessarily we can quantify the type of responses, but it's some of that. It takes a little bit of more understanding and expertise to be able to kind of look through that and say, okay, this is a common theme that's occurring in all of these interviews, or all of question 12, that open-ended question that we asked on the survey. This is what's in common. So you have to have someone on your team or someone external. And so to what you were saying, Shalita, you don't have to do everything. But for me, I like to explain things to leaders so where they just have an understanding, so that they know how to manage the process and know how to hold people accountable, and what to be looking for. So if anything, you just want to position yourself just to know enough so that you can hold people accountable. Because at the end of the day, you are the person. If you're the executive director of the organization, you are responsible, and you have to report to the board. Or even if you're a board member, you're responsible for the organization. So just to educate yourself, just to know enough, just to understand the process, so that if you hire an external evaluator, or if you hire someone within your organization that can take on evaluation responsibilities, you know how to communicate with that person and hold that person accountable.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said evaluation, because I wanted to hop back to that, because evaluation is another very intimidating term, especially if it's a grassroots organization, nonprofit visionary just getting started. And we know that different types of evaluation can be expensive depending on what it is. And when we talk about evidence-based models and promising practices, it gets real intimidating. So could you, in layman's terms, break it down by, if I'm a grassroots organization and I know evaluation is super important, but how do I do that? And what truly, in layman's terms, is evaluation of my programs?
And so you mentioned evidence-based and best practices. So I would say, think of those as resources. And so when you are implementing or when you're planning or even assessing if you need something to compare to, or you're not trying to recreate the wheel, there has been, so evidence-based means that there's been a huge investment as far as time and resources to validate whatever that programming was and the outcome. So, and that's a totally different budget. And so you don't have that. So don't worry about it. If anything, you can use evidence-based practices. You can research evidence-based practices, or best practices, which there's a difference between evidence-based and best practice, or promising programs, things that have been shown to be promising. Those are resources, and those are that work has been done in advance to be able to help individuals like you to be able to adapt and modify as needed and tailor it to your program. So think of it as a resource, and not that it's your responsibility to produce to prove that your program is unless they have the funding, unless you're funded to do that and you have the adequate resources, then that's okay. Then that's a different story. But evaluation is simply, in layman's term, you're just documenting and reviewing what it is that you said that you were going to do, and you're documenting and reviewing your lessons learned, your challenges, and the changes that you've made, and the changes that you probably need to make, and recommendations moving forward, because this is going to help your program and your organization in the future, but it could possibly help others as well who may want to implement something similar. And so, and then with your stakeholders, so stakeholders being community, your funders, stakeholders can mean a lot of different things. They could be internal, external, your board, right? So so evaluation helps to produce evidence.
Yes.
And and then you're going to interpret that information, or you provide the information for others to interpret, right? To say whether or not this program is working well, what worked well, what didn't work well, what needs to be changed, but then also your process. So not just about your outcomes, but your process. How many participants did we have? What were the challenges? COVID-19 changed. How what are some things? We're just we're just kind of documenting along the way, so that way we can tell our story. We can tell our story again of successes, and we can provide recommendations. But then also we're documenting our challenges, and so that's what evaluation is. And you're collecting your evidence to show, that we said that we were going to do ABC. Did we do ABC? How did we do ABC, and what were the outcomes of us doing ABC? That's all evaluation. And it doesn't have to be a rigorous evaluation necessarily where you have a huge budget, but you should have, when you're budgeting moving forward, if you haven't already, when you're, whether it's budgeting or for within the organization from existing dollars, operational, or whether it's for a grant, I would encourage you to write in between 10 to 20% for evaluation purposes. And this doesn't necessarily have to be an external evaluator. It could be done internally, but internally. So your original question was, software will I need? So if you're a monthly service for SurveyMonkey. And then, do I need the software to develop a report, or or training? Do I need to pay staff to take a class, a basic evaluation 101 class? And so, but I hope I answered your question.
You did. And evaluation is so important too, because we start organizations because a lot of times, especially as founders, there's something that's happened to us personally, and we want to help others that can relate to that. Or in some instances, we want to be that thing or that person that we needed at some point when we were going through, which inspired us to start our nonprofit organization. But understanding that what we may have needed may not be what the people in the community, even though you may share a similar experience or a similar background, there may be things that they need that's different from what you needed. And so always being, what Shawnta was saying, doing with the community engagement and being intentional about that and the information that you collect, because you may start out with one thing and say, well, I think, because you're not supposed to just go off your own thoughts anyway. You're supposed to make sure you engage the community up front when you're looking at what kind of information should I collect. But if you don't do that and you start doing the work, you'll start to see, based off of the information that you're collecting, whether or not what you're doing is working. And you need to be able to use that to say, okay, well, maybe I thought initially that this would help towards this outcome or get us to this outcome, but it's looking like we're not getting there. We need to shift. So really, it's about informing you internally, as well as those funders and organizations that are holding you accountable externally. But you really want to be that organization that is checking the temperature on how you're doing your work to see if you're actually on the path to impact in your community. And like Shawnta said, it's not about reinventing the wheel. I like to say it's about, we're going to throw some rims on it. Okay. We just put some spinners on it, whatever. We're not recreating the wheel. So just knowing that that's that, added layer of pressure that you may feel like you have on yourself that you can release, because everything that you're thinking about has already been done in some capacity, but the flavor that you bring to it is very unique. And there's resources out there that you should take advantage of. So I want to shift gears. Well, first, I'm going to give a shout out to those who actually popped in here in the comments. If you have a comment, if you have a question, please put it in here. Nick, okay. Nick Andrews, thanks for sharing the info. Thanks for tuning in, Nick. Thank you. Hey, if you're still on with us. And Carmen, we know you on here. Hey, Carmen, you beautiful too, lady. Okay. And we've got Chris, who said, hi, my fave. Okay. Is it the fave? Is the show your fave or we your fave? Is that just?
Am I the fave?
Chris? I know. Okay, we'll take it. And my mother-in-law, Brenda O'Neill, she said, good afternoon, everybody, just so you can, hey, mama. And Carmen, she also said SurveyMonkey is excellent. She was our guest last week talking about branding, our branding guru. So she's telling you SurveyMonkey is also wonderful. And I use it as well. And here she go, hey, girl. Okay, so y'all just make sure if you have questions, put it in here. But I would real quick, because I know Shawnta has to leave us in maybe about 10 minutes. Because I told you, I was about to say, I saw her calendar and whoo, child. But I wanted to talk about your book. So we talk about that other stuff.
Really quick, Equitable. I had thought of something.
Okay, come on with it.
Not being documented, which would be unique if your organization were to document this. A lot of people are, again, so from the very beginning, we talked about equitable practices and an equity lens. If you can actually, so equity is meeting people where they're at and providing them with what they need. But if you could be intentional with your with the work that you're doing, whether it's at the beginning and you're doing a needs assessment or throughout the process at the end in your evaluation. But if that's something that you can actually be intentional about documenting, you're already doing it, but just be intentional about communicating that will put you in a unique position as well. So I just want to close out on that.
Unique. We all about that. Okay. You gotta find your niche. You gotta stand out. Okay. Bam. Let's go back. She's an author too. So hold on, we put over here. I want with that, got my branding on top of everything. There we go. There she go. There we go. So Shawnta Jackson, the Journal of a Woman with Lived Experience. So can you tell us a little bit more about your book? What led you to writing it and just all about it?
Thank you, Shalita. Thank you. Thank you for asking me. I wasn't expecting it.
What? Okay.
No, I'm thinking just business.
This is business.
Okay. So my book, The Journal of a Woman with Lived Experience, is a 21-day guided journal. It includes 21 of my personal journal entries. And usually as an adult, what I would do is I would journal and throw my journals away out of shame, embarrassment, and guilt. I just didn't want people to see what I wrote. And then one day, so late 2019, I was sharing a journal entry with a guy friend of mine. And I was telling him I was kind of embarrassed about it. My original intent was to keep this journal to share with my son. So in the event of my passing, that my son, my grandkids, my lineage, I was thinking like that, like they could just have something to know who I was as an individual. And I started to get embarrassed about it. And he was like, no, actually, this could help a lot of people. Yeah. You never know. You never know who may find it. You think about your legacy. And then I just had this aha epiphany moment. And I said, you know what? And I was trying to find something else to do to be creative and kind of explore my different skills and strengths anyway.
Yeah.
And I always knew I was going to write a book, but I thought it was going to be on a professional topic. And I always wanted to do speaking engagements and travel the country, which I do, but it's usually professional topics. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I'm going to promote Shawnta Jackson, the individual, Shawnta Jackson, the brand. Yes. And so my book is available on my website at shawntajackson.com. It's only available on my website. And what I did is I engaged with individuals on social media and I asked them, I said, hey, I'm writing a guided journal. Should this be 365 days, 45 days, 90 days? And most people said 21 days. And I understand why why they chose 21 days, because it said that if you do something for 21 days consistently, it creates a habit. So I understand why they wanted that. So that's why it's a 21-day guided journal. I pulled my personal journal entry. So my personal journal entries were never intended to be shared with the public. They were never intended to be published in a book. I pulled 21 of my journal entries, and because of my evaluation background, I read them and I assigned themes to them. And I said, that's the power of storytelling. That's positive affirmations. That's self-validation, spontaneous thoughts, perseverance, life's bucket list. That's shallow thinking. Mm-hmm. And so basically the format of the book, I'm wearing two hats. I'm wearing the hat of Shawnta Jackson, the advisor, the coach, the mentor, where I'm providing advice on a topic, where I'm explaining to you why it's important to express gratitude and to believe in a power higher than yourself, and why it's important to recite positive affirmations to yourself, and other whatever topic it is, I put on that professional mentor, coach, advisor hat. But then there's the other hat. There's Shawnta Jackson, the individual, Shawnta Jackson, that vulnerable person. And so that's when I'm actually sharing my personal journal entry. And then after I share my journal entry, I provide a prompt for the reader and space for the reader to write. So for example, my third journal entry, expressions of gratitude. I explain the benefits, the scientifically benefits of gratitude, which include gratitude opens the doors for more relationships, improves physical health, improves psychological health, enhances empathy and reduces aggression, helps people to sleep better, self-esteem, mental strength. And then I share my actual personal journal entry where I express gratitude. And then I provide space for the reader, and I provide a prompt for you. So for this third journal entry, page 19, expression of gratitude, I say expressing gratitude improves your psychological health and creates reciprocity between you and God, also known as the universe. Write down at least 5 things that you are grateful for and why. Yeah. So that's an example. And then I talk about love and what I think that love is. And then I ask you, I provide prompts for you, whether you're in a relationship or not. How do you love yourself, and how do you want to be loved? And how do you express love, for example, and how do you want that person to express love to you? Love has languages, right? Mm-hmm. And so journaling has a lot of different, various benefits on our mental health and even physical health as well. And a lot of people want to journal, but they don't know how or where to start. And this book teaches individuals how to start, and I provide my real life examples.
I love it. And I love how we naturally gravitated towards this, because you said, well, I thought this was just about business and not personal. I always tell my nonprofit visionaries too, that you can't separate the two, especially if you are starting a nonprofit organization, because this is something very personal to you. And most times it's your healing journey. It's part of your healing journey. Mm-hmm. So if we can't talk about those very things, about love and gratitude and even anger, forgiveness, if we can't talk about how they actually influence us in our personal life, then they're going to manifest in our professional life. All of it. I'm a firm believer in how you do one thing is how you do all things. Of course, when we're in a business or professional setting, we'll say, okay, well, there are certain etiquette rules or laws. But at the end of the day, if you have communication issues in your personal life, you're going to have communication issues in your professional life. So being able to self-care, take care of yourself, write down your thoughts, journal. And I know I have to be better at slowing down and actually writing my thoughts down and then going consistently, because I'll do it and then I'll forget about it, and then I won't journal for a few months or a year or two and then come back and try to do it again. So if you don't get anything from what we just said today, get that. Yes, it's very important that you are intentional about the data that you collect, about the impact that you're working to create in the community over time, but that you also have to take care of yourself while you're doing it.
And that's what that journal does. And now that I'm thinking about it, you said that
Uh-oh. I think we lost Shawnta. No, where'd she go? I hope she hops back in here because I wanted her to see your thank you, Chris. I wanted her to see that. Well, she'll see it in the playback. And Nick, I'm so glad that you're still here. And I hope you watched the playback. Yes. Oh, here she is. Okay, hold up. Bring her back. What happened? I was like, no. Okay, I wanted you to see Chris's comment to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
no,
sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah, so let's pull up Chris's comment. So thank you, Shawnta. I'm in the early stages of my nonprofit. Thank you, Chris. I'm glad to be able to provide some type of insight and to be a resource. Shalita, you were saying that a lot of people start nonprofit organizations because of a personal experience that they've had. Mm-hmm. And in my book, my first journal entry, I tell a story of resilience, and I talk about how there's power in storytelling. Mm-hmm. And I think that journal entry is actually good for a lot of individuals who we have these passion positions and these socially conscious initiatives and work that we're doing. But I think it's also important for us to do some self-assessment. So it's less is self-care, but there's also self-help and self-actualization, emotional intelligence.
Ooh, that's a word. Yes.
And how we feel, where we're coming from, and why we may think the way that we do. And so my first story of resilience is basically a story of I was in an unhealthy relationship. I was 19 years old, had a boyfriend, 5 kids, married him when I was 21. So I'm 21 with 5 stepkids, unhealthy. When I say unhealthy, sometimes abusive, sometimes physically abusive, verbally abusive, financial, control, different things at different times in that relationship. And I actually ended that relationship the last day we were ever together. The last night I slept in the bed with my shoes on, and the next day I snuck out of the house. Mm-hmm. And I talk about that in my first journal entry, one, because I am talking about love and relationships throughout the book, and my dreams, my wishes, my visions. And I want the reader to understand who I am and why I think a little bit of just a little background about me, so you can understand why I think the way that I do. Mm-hmm. But then also I know that me telling my personal story is helping someone. I know that there are women currently right now who are in domestic violence relationships, and sometimes we are afraid to leave for various reasons, especially if we are dependent upon that person, or we think we are. But literally I left, snuck out of the house, no packing. Mm. And even prior before that, usually you leave a person more than once. So I even talk about that in the story. One time I left, and I had 3 pairs of dirty clothes, $200, my baby in a car seat, no social security card, no birth certificates. Imagine right now leaving your home to go out and something happens to where it's not safe for you to go back into your home ever. So, and whatever valuables you do retrieve from your home is what that person decides to give to you, and when they decide to give it to you. Mm. And so if I can do it, and if I could come out at the end of the day, that's something that I went through, and it's a part of who I am, and I'm proud of who I am, and I'm resilient. I'm look at what I've done.
Yes.
Right. Since
Yes.
then, I went back to grad school. I'm working professionally. I'm 100% self-employed. I have the opportunity to employ or hire other consultants and kind of I'm contributing to society in multiple ways, right? And I'm healthy. I'm present. I'm aware. I have a healthy child. I have a respectful child. I respect others, myself, and so I'm growing and I'm learning as a person. And so a part of this book, this is my first book. It won't be my only,
No.
but this is a book that it's a journey, and whoever decides to join me on this journey, I really appreciate that. And again, if you want to learn more, you can visit my website at shawntajackson.com. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Shawnta. I mean, you're just an amazing woman, and your courage. Number one, it's one thing to have those experiences and be reflective of them, but to share them with the world and not really knowing how the world is what they're going to take from it, but
Right.
knowing that it's going to help someone and help more than one person. Thank you for that. And you have encouraged me to. I have to one. I'm going to start by going through, like I said, I was going to do, right, and go through my own journaling process through using your book, because it is so very important. We all have a story, but you having the courage to put this out there like this, it just shows how much of an amazing woman that you are and how far that you have come. And like you said, if you can do it, you inspire so many of us to know that we can do it too. And be a boss, right? And be a boss. That's it. Okay. And if you're also looking at getting support around equity or equitable community engagement and evaluation, I'm going to put up her business website, because yes, we talked about where you can go to get.
Yes, causeengagement.com.
Causeengagement.com. Please make sure that you look Shawnta up and that you engage her around cause engagement. Okay. Thank you so much, Shawnta, for joining us, for sharing so much of yourself on a personal and professional level. I really appreciate it. I know everyone who will be watching this is appreciative of it. But also, before you go, I want to, because I appreciate when folks chime in and interact. And so Nick Andrews also said, I officially filed my articles for my nonprofit after 7 years of market research and disparity studies. Then the world shut down. Yes, the world has shut down, but don't get discouraged, because this too shall pass, I believe. And if you need support, again, if it's in the evaluation space or community engagement space, make sure you reach out to Shawnta. If you need one-on-one coaching, nonprofit coaching, make sure you reach out to me as well. And you can also become a hashtag nonprofit no filter on my website, ShalitaO'Neal.com. There's so many different ways that I can be of support to you. So don't be shy about reaching out to me. Let's see how much time do we have left. We have about 7 minutes left.
I'm like, keep going. So the person that posted that comment,
I'm gonna put it back up.
Yes. So Nick, you said that you had spent 7 years doing research. Don't let this stop you, because already 7 years. So there's a different type of in entrepreneurship. It's just like, what type of entrepreneur are you? And so even though as a nonprofit visionary, I guess this would say, what type of nonprofit visionary are you? Are you one of those visionaries that say, you know what, I'm going to step out and I'm just going to learn as I go, understanding that I don't necessarily know everything, but I'll learn and grow? Or are you that nonprofit visionary that everything has to be set in place? And if one thing goes wrong, you're not able to move forward with what it is that you want to do, right? So you have to make a decision of what type of nonprofit visionary you want to be. And in my space, it would be, what type of entrepreneur do I want to be?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And always being nimble and looking at because even in business, successful businesses, they are nimble and they're flexible and they can respond to what's going on in the community. So if you had one approach in mind before COVID hit, take a look and see, you can still do those things, but how does it need to shift? How can it be virtual? Do you need to virtually reach out to individuals, or do you need to virtually begin to grow your network? Start to think, how are you going to shift? Because there's always a solution solution. There's always a way around the different barriers.
Everyone has had the show.
Absolutely. And like Shawnta said, if it's not COVID, it'll be something else down the line where you're going to have to, as a nonprofit visionary and leader, you're going to have to re-strategize and figure out, how am I going to get around this? But again, I always take it back to your board members, your tribe. You shouldn't be doing this by yourself. You should have a group of people who are also there with you to help you strategize around, well, how are we going to shift? And then what pieces of that can they help you with? So, if you wanted to be in things all by yourself and alone and making your own decisions, then maybe for-profit is the way to go. But nonprofit, being intentional about building a tribe of people around you who can support you. And Jamie, okay, so Jamie, hey, Jamie. So she said, this is a good listen. A side note on long-term journaling. We may not understand what and why stuff happens before and during journaling, but reviewing throughout years of the process often turns on the, so that's what was up light bulb. The gift of keeping at it and reviewing objectively. What do you say about that, Shawnta?
No, I 100% agree. And just even finishing this particular journal, you kind of go back and you look, and I've learned a few things about myself in the process of writing the book and reviewing my journal entries, and where I was at when I actually wrote those entries and where I'm at now and what I realized about myself. So yes, it is a form of self-assessment, and you have to be kind and be patient with yourself. And I don't know if we can be objective looking at ourselves, but I think that we can be understanding and be real with ourselves and say, okay, this is the space that I was in. And this is why I felt that way. And thinking about now, how do I feel now? Am I still in that same space? Have I changed? Have I grown? And if not, what do I need to work on? And this is something for me to kind of analyze myself. And then also, my book may actually prompt individuals to seek professional care. And because it's not a replacement for therapy, for professional therapy. But I do understand that not everyone is comfortable or ready for that. But this book may serve as a form of self-therapy. But for those who may need a little bit more, it may actually make you feel a little bit more comfortable, or this is probably something that you can even take with you to a therapist and say, this is what I've been processing. It's kind of hard for me to articulate and to communicate with you, but this is my book, and this is what and then maybe that can be a guide or for a conversation with someone that you trust.
I love that. Well, thanks, Shawnta, again. And I thank everybody who was able to join in live and those who are still joining in recording. Thank you for joining us for the hashtag Nonprofit No Filter live discussion with Shawnta Jackson. I hope you also tune in next Tuesday. So remember, we're doing this every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, hashtag Nonprofit No Filter discussion. Next week, our guest will be Christine Dunkerton, who is the executive director of Community Law Center here in Maryland. So a lot of my clients have a lot of legal questions, a lot of legal compliance. My 990s, I forgot to file them, or what kind do I need to file, or I'm about to enter an agreement with this event company, or all of those questions. Make sure you bring them with you next week here. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube page so that you can get the notifications. Make sure you like my Facebook page as well. And don't forget to share with folks, because we shared some good information today in our discussion that other people can benefit from. So until next time, make sure you be real, have fun, but get results. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Shawnta.